This video is intended to give some talking points when you're considering position play in pool. Now, one thing that you have to realize is that there's a wide variation of ways that balls can be run. Therefore, there's a lot of disagreement on how any one rack can be ran or what pattern can be played. There's infinite variation in straight pool, a lot of variation in 8-ball. The game that has where you would see more consistent pattern play, or another way of saying it, where you would see more than one pro run the balls the same way as a 9-ball. So just another way of saying it, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So even with this grouping that I'm going to demonstrate a little bit later, there would be some disagreement on how it would be done. The two most basic principles of position play in pool is, one, you have to visualize your run at least 3 balls ahead. Most people would agree that it's not good enough to pocket the object ball and leave the next ball to chance, that you want to pocket the object ball, set up a position for the next ball, which would give you a position play for the next ball. Now, some pros are able, once they break, say, for example, a 9-ball rack, and the balls are open, they're able to visualize the entire run. Many of them are able to visualize it immediately. The second major principle of position play is leaving the cue ball on the correct side of your next ball. And this is a short demonstration of that. If I were to play the 3-ball to the 4, and I want to play, and say my next shot is somewhere down the table, I want to leave the cue ball on this side of this line, which allows me to stun in this direction. If the play were 3, 4, 9, I would want to leave the cue ball somewhere on this side of the line, so I could stun back in this direction. Here's a list of other principles that you want to consider when you're learning position play. The first is you want to limit the cue ball movement as much as possible. The thinking is the less the cue ball has to move to set up for the next shot, the less that can happen and the more predictable its path is. For example, this is a basic example. If I'm playing the 3 to get shaped for the 4, I don't want to play a draw shot back to the cushion and into the zone. The thinking is that that's too much can happen, that's too hard to predict, especially if there were any interfering balls here. It's much better and easier to predict if you hit the 3 and stun into the zone. The next principle is to learn to play position without rail usage. Now, a lot of people would disagree on that. Some people have the ability to control their speed if they go one rail, especially if it's a very thin cut on the object ball. But again, learning to play without using the rail, that means chances are you're going to use less English, which is always advantageous, and it also reduces the movement of the cue ball, which goes back to the principle I just talked about just now. The less the cue ball has to move, the more variables you take out of the equation, the more predictable the runs can become. The next principle, and this is sort of maybe self-explanatory, maybe obvious, but if I have an object ball here, this is the 10 ball, you want to play a position as such where the 10 ball is played to the short pocket. You don't want to set up shots like running it down the rail to that corner, or trying a really outrageous shot by cutting it over into this corner, playing it from this end of the ball. The simpler the shot, the higher percentage the shot, the greater likelihood that your run is going to continue. here's another one. And this is why I've set this up. Is you want to try to shoot into a zone. And Phil Capel says that it's not good enough to visualize your zone as a square or a circle. He says that zones are best represented or best imagined as these wedges that I have cut out here. Now, as you notice, you have the back end of the zone is very wide, and it tapers into a point. And here's a concept of playing zone that I thought was interesting on another video that I saw. If you're playing a 3, we're going to 3 to 4. And this may sound like it contradicts another principle, but it's still something to think about. It's much easier to hit the 3, come back off the rail in this way, and into the zone, which is a large margin of error if you're having trouble with speed control. If you come off of the 3 and across the zone, there's a very small margin of error here. That's a much smaller space to hit. Another possibility, which is a little easier to hit, is hitting the 3 and then rolling through the fatter part of the zone. Being that there's a larger area to hit, your margin of error is a lot larger, and there's a greater percentage that you're going to be in the area that you need to be. The approach that works the best is, again, coming into the zone, like so. That gives you your largest margin of error. Another principle of position play is that you want to, in order to get the greatest variety of shots or the greatest number of options to play for the next ball, it's good to play an angle that's anywhere from 15 to 35 degrees. Like say, for example, this. The worst shape that you can get on a ball most of the time is being exactly straight in. Straight in, as it said, is death. Table conditions are going to affect your style of play or your approach when you're trying to run balls. One example of this is if the table is playing extremely fast, you want to play shallower angles. You want to play angles that are closer to straight in, which gives you more control over the cue ball. If the table is playing extremely slow, you want to widen your angles a little bit to move the cue ball. Okay, to sort of wrap everything up, I want to demonstrate the run that I have here. This is a 9-ball run, and it's going to go 3 corner, 4 corner, 5 side, 7 side, 9 corner. And it's sort of to put together all the principles that I've been talking about. Now, obviously, I was talking about the principle of minimal cue ball movement, and then the principle of moving the cue ball into the zone. So that sort of contradicted itself, but still, it's both principles are still true. So depending on your comfort level, and I'm very good at controlling stun and draw, at least in my own mind. So what I would do is I would pocket the 3 in the corner with some draw, leaving the cue ball somewhere in this area. Then I would play the 4 into the same corner, leaving the cue ball somewhere on this wedge for the 5. Then I would play the 5 into the side pocket, leaving the cue ball somewhere on this wedge. Then I would play the 7 into the side pocket, leaving the cue ball down for the 9. Now, I don't have a wedge for the 9 ball, but since to the corner pocket, there's a wide area that will give you a playable shot. So think of the wedge as being this large, this whole section of the table. So that's an extremely large zone to get into. And that's one thing you should know. When you have a hanger like that, virtually anywhere on the table is a zone